So cool, guys. Everybody, thank you for joining us, especially Mark Salzberg. I don't think he needs any introduction, but I will give him a formal introduction. He is the founder of the Certified Collectibles Group, which, of course, has a variety of different, companies underneath that in the collectible space. And, of course, as you're a coin collector, acknowledging that he, of course, is the founder of NGC, which is, of course, one of the largest graders in the world. I think actually the largest grader in the world as of today. So we'll get kicked off here, Mark. We appreciate you being here. Once again, guys, I'm Nick Adamo, the CEO of Bullion Shark. I have Mark here, who's our head of social media. Then we have, of course, the more famous Mark Salzberg. So we just want to get started. Basically, we'll start at the beginning. How did you fall in love with coins and collectibles in general that kind of led to, founding CCG?
The story goes with if you have that gene and you're a collector, you just discover it, right? You either have it or you don't have it. But I was walking on the streets of Oyster Bay, Long Island, and a little girl walked up to me. I was about 8 years old. She handed me a 1903 penny just out of the blue. So I brought it home, showed it to my dad, and he got me a coin book. I was just fascinated by coins from that moment on. I remember opening up the coin book. I don't remember what it is today, but it was soft cover, and I pointed a coin and dreamed about owning it. Just the fascination of the value and the history behind it, the artistry. I just fell in love. So I started going to coin club meetings, and then I worked at a coin shop when I was about 10 or 11, and I started buying and selling. Matter of fact, John Albanese hired me at that coin shop, and I just learned from the ground up. When you work in a coin shop, you have to know everything. Junk, silver, rolls, circulated material, how to weigh things, how to make sure people don't take things. So I started buying and selling, silver dollars, things like that. I raised corn on the side of the road at my parents' farm. They had 40,000 chickens. So I would raise corn and sell it on the side of the road. And I remember buying a half cent and telling my mom I worked a whole summer for a half cent, and I bought a 1797 half cent or whatever it was. But 3-cent nickels were like $150 back then. So you also learn about value and how to deal with individuals. So when I was about 15 in high school, I was doing very well. I was making more than my teachers in high school buying and selling coins. And then I started going to coin shows, and then you started hearing about, there was grading, there was ANACs, etc. And you started hearing in the 86, 85, you started hearing about this advent of, certification, encapsulation. PCGS came around. David Hall and his group, including Albanese, founded PCGS. And the idea was to encapsulate these coins, be impartial, have a guarantee, and a standard. And then David Hall made bids on his coins. So there was it caught on right away. And I was a top grader at PCGS. I was grading like 40,000 coins a month, and I was buying and selling. It was just a time that you can't replicate. Then Albanese decided to open NGC. I joined them immediately as a founder, stock founder, whatever you want to call it. And of course, the market really wanted two grading services. In '91, we were hot, and everybody was really into certification. You really learn from back then what that kind of time frame. You learn what gets submitted and who the players are, how collectors operate, how great collections are built. John left in '91. I took over and started to grade modern coins and started to really expand the business. So, we were off to the races at that point.
So basically, you started as a grader, you said, at NGC?
Yeah, an owner as well. Yeah, and I was.
Sorry, I meant PCGS. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, and a grader. I started a grader at PCGS. I was buying and selling before. There's a market component that's very, very important to understand. When you're grading a coin, you can be technical. So I'll give you an example. You take a bust half dollar that looks 61 or 62 because it's frosty. It might have some stacking on the face. And, you know, you could say technically that coin is 58, meaning almost uncirculated. But no one's going to sell it in the right mind and knows what they're doing as a 58 because a market value of a 61, 62. So that market component is important. So if you take somebody who's just an academic and knows coins and the attribution and this and that, they lack that kind of market component that's necessary to really have all the elements of a successful grader, in my opinion.
Sure. So you think that basically the buying and the selling and being in the coin shop in the beginning, the day to day, kind of really helped you be a, you know, objective grader as well.
100%. I mean, you see, you know, immediately here's an example. So I had this knack of telling you a gold coin was counterfeit from across the room. And the reason is because it just has a different softness to it. The color's off. There's something just off. So it's that blink kind of thing. I had that. Now, Rick Montgomery, who was academically trained, could tell you why it's not. Yeah, from a die standpoint and from a marker standpoint. Doesn't mean there's any, you know, I admire that. I never really was something I wanted to know about, right? But if you want to be completely, you know, full, you have all the tools in your toolkit, you know that as well. But I just wasn't interested in that component. But it gave you that basic, you know, kind of street smart of coins.
It's kind of like that feel, like you can kind of, you know, like you said, when you have a coin in your hand, you can sense if it's, you know, it feels right, you know, it looks right, and, you know, without having all the intricacies and details, you know, at your fingertips, you know?
Yeah. And as you as a retailer, you know, it's very important for you to make sure that those coins that you're selling to your customers and building these collections that have a nice retail look. You know, a coin could be graded accurately, right? But if it doesn't have eye appeal, then it lacks something, right? And that's where you come in. You know, besides the pricing it properly and sourcing it, you know, that's a very important component because over a period of time, you're building these collections that take on a certain signature, and you want it to be, you know, if you have 20 coin set and 19 of them look like hell, you know, and they're accurately graded technically, that's not what you want. You want consistency and want great eye appeal.
Yeah, sure. And that's why we offer our clients tons of NGC coins, because we know, you know, the standard is second to none. We know the eye appeal is 99% of the time on coins going to be second to none. And we also know that, like I said, we have the right people looking at those coins, and, you know, the value is there for our clients. So I guess I'll get on to my next question is kind of what inspired you to launch NGC, and like what need do you think there was back in the day that, you know, you said, like, you know, I should start this grading service?
Well, I think that you want to even the playing field, right? Because it's not just dealer to dealer; it's collector to dealer, it's dealer to collector. It's, you know, if you look at GIA, for example, the Gemological Institute, while they're nonprofit, which is crazy to me, but you know, you get a certificate and it has all the, you know, that it's been independently certified. That gives you and the rest of the population the comfort and the confidence to buy that coin, knowing that it's been looked at impartially. I have to step away from the coin business on a commercial basis in order to be involved in this, right? And that was a tough thing. I love buying and selling beautiful things, but I knew that conflict of interest just it didn't operate. It didn't work well in what we were trying to achieve. So that impartiality also allowed me to be a resource. So we had population reports, the registry. We had just my knowledge of conservation that led me to open numismatic conservation service. You know, there was all these elements that from that one grading service, it launched a number of grading services, and we replicated that model. But the common denominator is people want an impartial third party certifying their material. It's like a referee, you know, and the market embraced that standard as well. And we just kept adding great talent and aggregating great graders in each category. But I knew when we launched, when we replicated the model with comic books, that we were really onto something. You know, we did currency, of course, but that's numismatic. That's paper money guarantee. But when we launched comic books, you know, it really caught on. And what you saw was the same thing you saw when we launched each category before that. was that the greatest things went in the holders first, because those are the guys that really want to take care of their material. They've had it forever. They didn't sell it because their gut told them that Action 1 in, you know, nice grade is just not, it's just rare. And even though it was 300,000-400,000 at the time, they weren't selling it, right? An Action 1 in 6 today is, you know, $3 million. If you look at what we did across all these different categories, we just replicated the model, plugged in the right grader, and really listened to what the collector wanted in terms of grading standard and tools.
So even before coins, am I correct in saying that you had other lines, like you said, as comics, comic grading, and everything else that you guys did, or was that launched afterwards?
That was launched afterwards. We started with coins, went to currency, which is an extension of numismatics, and then went to comic books. I launched numismatic conservation. We did stamps in China, you know, and then I launched this thing called CAG, where we did estates. The first estate was the Neil Armstrong estate, which was, you know, one of the highlights of my career.
Oh, cool. Very cool. So I guess when you did start NGC and you started introducing this third-party grading alongside PCGS, you know, was there any pushback when you did this? Were people like dealers and also collectors included kind of, I guess, nervous about getting their coins graded, or was this something that people just adopted right away?
Yeah, there was definitely purists who said, I don't need you to tell me what my coins are. And you know, we didn't force people to use us. I guess the best example is the world graders, you know, world, you know, European numismatists or European dealers. European dealers, it's shocking to me. We started grading world coins maybe 30 plus years ago. And you still, you know, 10 years after, you still had dealers, you know, poo-pooing, you know, kind of criticizing everything, telling you didn't know what you're doing. And you'd have an auction by that dealer or several dealers, and they would sell their coins raw. US dealers would buy them at an auction, get them graded by us, put them in another auction, and they'd go for 5 times as much. And yet the dealer still didn't get his stuff graded. And you fast forward now 30 years, and there's still dealers that will not embrace certification. It makes no sense to me, but that's just human nature. You know, one of the resistance of comic books was that for a long period of time, and this existed in ancients as well when we started grading ancients, you know, you have dealers out there that, you know, they kind of identify the book as net, call it a 6, call it net 6. Well, what does that mean? It has restoration, it has this, it has that. They're optimistic about the grade. Now, when we started grading books, we had you know, different categories. If it's restored or this or that, it didn't get into the purest label. They hated that. Well, I call that skeletons in the closet. But at the other side of it, those same dealers were the most knowledgeable in terms of the market and the depth of the market, and they had the knowledge. So if you took those hits right away and you've embraced certification, you were way ahead of the game. And you know, most dealers did after a period of time. They were forced to. But yeah, there's always naysayers.
All right. Yeah, you always got to have something new. You know, people are going to adopt it at their pace, and some people are more comfortable than others. But I know grading has revolutionized, you know, buying and selling coins, especially on the retail level, where you know, clients can rest assured what they're getting is, you know, backed by that guarantee of NGC, the quality, and they know it's authentic. And you know, they don't have to be so-called expert in order to identify the grades or the quality. Because even, for example, with, say, a clean coin, you know, a novice collector might not know. The coin might look beautiful in their eyes, but maybe it's improperly cleaned, and NGCs could identify that, and the value could actually be a lot less versus you know, a coin that is not cleaned and is original. So we know that you know, definitely helps the collector and gives them peace of mind. Now, I know, you know, not just with NGC with coins, but you guys expanded, as you alluded to earlier, you know, with comics, trading cards, and then you said, like I said, the artifacts. I mean, you know, what drove that evolution into these different kinds of, I guess, you know, categories?
Yeah, I think it's the I let the business dictate where we're going to go. You have to remember, I graded every day. I sat in this grading room and graded, and I'd hear what dealers needed. I'm a collector of many different things, art and ceramics and ancient coins and, glass. So I would, really was a student of the, totally of the arts world. And, what I saw was that there was a need in each category to solve these problems. And once you start solving this problem, you open up tremendous value. So for example, when we started grading ancient coins, we didn't have to guarantee the product, but it's implied that it was guaranteed. And I don't know about you, but I was intimidated prior to that to hold a ancient coin. I couldn't tell you what the hell it was. I mean, I went to Drexel University for 9 days. I mean, I'm not an academic, but I always learn. I'm always trying to learn. But if you show me an ancient coin, I can't tell you if it was repaired or if the rim was filed or what. I couldn't identify what it was necessarily, pretty much. But now that we had, we started that category, now you have 2 great or 3 great graders attributing it, telling you that it hasn't been tooled, etc., describing it. We had to come up with a standard for that. But that gave the ability for people to, like myself, to start acquiring ancient coins, and that's a worldwide category. So think about the value creation there. And so that to me was just an extension of what we were doing all along. We're just listening to the marketplace.
So you saw the need for it and people wanting to have these items authenticated and with the same kind of guarantees, and you guys basically expanded into those different categories as the demand allowed.
Correct. And then we started to see what people really wanted from there. They wanted population reports. They wanted things broken down by variety. They wanted a registry that gave them the way to show off their collection and compete. And that was a tool that probably the most powerful tool in all numismatics. And I think David Hall came up with that at PCGS. It's brilliant. So we replicated it. And I think now Certified Collectibles Group has the largest registry in the world.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, listen, I mean, the price guides are very informative to get ideas to what things are worth if you're a novice collector, or even if you're an astute collector, someone's been collecting for a very long time. The population report on NGC is very useful to know how many coins have graded in those grades. So, I mean, there's a lot of useful information, and forget it all, the content that, NGC Coin puts out on their website of, just educating everybody. And it's really phenomenal.
I would also add, it really highlighted I would say the credibility of the dealers that we had in our network. For you, for example, I mean, you're vetted. You're not just like Joe Schmo who can just submit coins. And, you have years and years behind you. You have great knowledge, and you're guiding these people. So, they come to us and go, who can we trust? And so you're one of those trusted dealers. And I think we have thousands of them, but it really just raises all boats. It's just one of those things that we led the way, but we did it in a way that was, a resource to everyone.
Yeah, I agree. The transparency makes it easier for us to do our job and for collectors to collect. And, and NGC has really been at the forefront of making sure that happened, with all the experts on staff. So, it's been really good. And like I said, making it easier just for everybody. Now, I guess that kind of leads me to my next question that I have. And this is a little bit of a side note, but I believe NGC and the CCG group had almost 500 employees.
Yeah, when I right before I sold, it was close to 600, I believe.
So almost 600 people. So how did you maintain across all those different channels and categories, the quality, and the oversight, with all these different, categories?
Yeah, I think in each category, I insisted that there be a leader. So in comic books, that was Matt Nelson. In currency, that was Chad Hawk and Sergio Sanchez. And, there was these certain guys that had respect and that could control a room. And in NCS, it was Dave Kameyer. And then the subsets of that are, modern world and modern coins in general. So you have to have leadership there. And then you have to have systems that take these teams and give them the resources that they need to be successful. And look, the way that I always looked at it is very simple. You have that great turnaround time, be consistent, and have great customer service. And so if you keep those fundamentals in place and you get out of, experts' ways, you're gonna do fine. The problem was that we became so big and it became so unwieldy that I was spending more time, dealing with things that I didn't really enjoy. And like I said, I really like grading. I get lost in that, and I love the artifacts. But those fundamentals of protecting the artifact with great holders, and giving people what they need, resources, it's just fundamental stuff. But after a while, it got a little out of hand.
I could imagine as you're scaling, especially such a large operation, largest grader in the world. I mean, you got to have a lot more than just coin grading or, enjoying, the collectibles. There's a lot more behind the scenes with employees and everything else understandable. I guess I'll finalize as far as the CCG part, and expanding grading and everything else. What would you say was the coolest coin or the most expensive coin, whatever you choose, that you've ever certified yourself? And a little bit about the story behind that. And then the second part of my question, what's your proudest, accomplishment overall at CCG before, you pass the baton?
Okay, that's a big one. I guess I can combine two things. I worked for years to have a collaboration with the Smithsonian Museum, and they have the National Collection. And my wife, when we were just dating, took me to the Smithsonian to look at the collection. I didn't even know. I was never at the Smithsonian before. And I remember seeing the Lily collection, and it was up on plexiglass and held in place with like these little prongs, and it was like, glue. It was weird. And I was just fascinated by this incredible set of proof gold. And I remember seeing a 1839 2.5 Omen. And I remember just going like, I can't believe, that I'm looking at this. Well, years later, I convinced the Smithsonian to let me conserve the National Collection. Oh, and wow. then they and the reason is they had this idea. They called it Legends of Numismatics, and they wanted to take the best out of that collection, 70 pieces, and they wanted to put it on display at the castle. So it was called the Castle Smith, found as Smithsonian, and I paid for that display, and it was wonderful. But they asked me to select out the 70 best items, and I remember going through the vault and opening up drawers and taking out what I thought were the greatest things: ultra high relief 4920, which is unique. And I pulled out a drawer, and there's a 3902 2.5, right? Wow. I mean, it was like it came full circle. It was crazy to me. And then they had pre-selected some currency, and they had it in a Mylar, little Mylar, and I was going through that. In the middle of the bundle was number one $100,000 gold note. Like, what the hell, right? I mean, if that was on the market today, that's 25 million bucks or something. It's priceless. Wow. The 4920 is unique, and that whole experience was unbelievable. So I gave a speech that when it was launched, my parents were there, my family was there, and it was a huge success. And that model was used afterwards. 2.4 million people came to see that display, and then every other museum, every other category modeled that afterwards, and they kept putting things on display at the castle. So I mean, there's so many things that I've seen. I'm so fortunate to have been exposed to the greatest, hoards, collections, deals. I think the other thing I'd like to say is that, like, my employees were wonderful, right? I mean, that was my spirituality. I love them. I miss them now. It's been 3 years since I sold, but they worked their ass off, right? And they were like a cross section of America. 80% or so were minorities, and they just worked so hard. And it was like this common partnership. Like, I walk around and we'd have lunch. I didn't know everybody's name, because after a while you can't, but it was just a wonderful atmosphere. And I miss them. I miss that.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, listen, that's incredible to say the least. I mean, looking at it and certifying and conserving Smithsonian coins, I mean, you can't say many people have done that, to say the least. And I mean, like you said, seeing things that are really second to none and will never make it back into the public hands is pretty incredible. And I'll lead that into recently, actually, since now you've retired from CCG, you've been starting to actually sign signature labels for coins. Of course, assuming coins that you really enjoy, you like, and you really think have great eye appeal and are just kind of the best of the best. And so you're authentically hand signing these. I mean, what does that mean to you personally? And when you sign coins, I mean, I'm sure you're not just signing anything and everything, right? You want to sign coins that really reflect your legacy. So like, how do you go about that?
I think it's a gut thing. I always like modern coins, believe it or not, like sets of proof gold and sets of proof silver eagles, silver dollars, rows of Mercury dimes, walkers, proof walkers, things that have value that you can actually complete a set of.
Sure.
My contention is, like, I collect art, right? So, all art was modern at some point, right? And now it's it's 50 years old or whatever it is, and it's appreciated. And who am I to say what somebody likes or doesn't like? I happen to like modern coins when they're accurately graded and there's the right combination of mint and aesthetics. I like 3-cent nickels. I like vintage coins. I think over time, and that's the key, over time these things do well. But there's a psychological return versus the investment return. But I think I combine that. So if I feel those things if they check the box, I'm happy to sign those coins or sign my label and combine it with those coins. There's plenty of value out there. It's not all proof 20 libs and one pop one kind of stuff. And again, that navigating that is so important. So people out there really need to have a dealer that they can trust to navigate that for them, right? You can say it could be a pop one of a modern coin and doesn't mean it has a lot of value. It's just that it's fabricated in some cases. And there's you just have to navigate that as you would if you went to Christie's or Sotheby's or in the art world. And I think gold has a lot. I think has a lot of room to run in general. The metals have a lot of room to run. So I think we're in a good position here. I think we're in the first or second inning of where the markets can go, because you have so much money that's sitting on the sidelines, so much wealth that's been created in the markets that has to be deployed somewhere. And I know through the years I met hedge fund guys and titans of industry, and they tend to buy a lot of great things. They want to buy great things and put them away. And I think coins are undervalued. I think that I could also collect jewelry, and I use an expert for that. I don't know, but I want to learn. So I think there's a lot of areas in coins that I'll be happy to sign and happy to talk to the collectors about it. It connects me with the things I really like about numismatics and the coin business.
I think you brought up a good point too. You don't have to necessarily be an expert in a particular field that you're interested in collectibles in order to start collecting. Yeah. Of course, the more educated you are, and you should educate yourself over time, the better. And there's tons of resources out there on ngccoin.com or even our website, bullionsharks.com. We have, like I said, a lot of information on coins, and so does NGC, and which is constantly being updated. But I think that, they could rely on experts such as yourself, such as, us here at Bullion Shark to help them, find the best of the best pieces for their collection, even if they're just getting started. So like you said, I mean, sometimes you need to utilize expert opinions, and not do all of this yourself, because it can be the times. Yeah.
And I think that, I'm signing and you're, with you guys, right? And I could have done this with, a lot of other people. I like you guys because you're young, you have a social component. You work close. You're not selling manufactured rarities, manufactured collectibles. There's a difference between numismatics and collectibles. You can make this stuff, denominate it, say it's X, and have a disclaimer that it is a collectible. But that's not numismatics. That's not what you're selling. and I like how you guys operate.
I appreciate that. Yeah, well, listen, we really try to provide value to the clients, and I was going to actually kind of segues perfectly to my next question. So, Mark's given us the privilege of working with him to hand sign labels for us, right, on select coins. And one of the labels actually that you're signing, which is probably my favorite of all time, I just think this is very personal, is the Salzberg hand selected label. So can you tell us a little bit about that and what that hand selected really means?
Yeah, so it's essentially, examining each coin, making sure the eye appeal is good, making sure that the strike is, adequate and commensurate with the grade. And in general, it's just I remember looking at bags of silver dollars when they were still coming in, and I could go through a bag of silver dollars in 2 hours, 1,000 coins. But I like looking at coins, so this gives me the opportunity to look at things that I like and make sure that they're aligned with our philosophy, Bullion Shark's philosophy, my philosophy.
I think that also is pretty cool, to say the least. I mean, because if you think about it, someone of your stature, right, who's a very busy guy and has looked at, viewed, conserved coins that are historical coins, or looked at bills that are worth 10, $20 million. And now, like I said, to have you still loving the hobby so much to take the time and effort to look at these pieces is pretty incredible. So I appreciate that, and you giving back to the coin collecting community, because it's not something you really have to do. And obviously it's not something that, like I said, maybe the best, time spent for you, of course, but with a limited time.
I enjoy it. I really do enjoy it. It gives me, I remember I've said this, it's like Zen for me, right? When I was grading bulk gold or bulk dollars, or I would go off into the, somewhere else as I was grading, and people can understand that I've graded or done that kind of work. I'm there, I'm certainly concentrating. I see what I'm doing, but it also gives me a peace of mind. Hard to understand, but for me, I get the same feeling when I'm going to be looking at, or have been looking at, a bunch of coins that I'm going to be signing my name to as well. It's the same thing.
Yeah, very cool. And that kind of leads us into some really exciting stuff. So if everybody probably knows, if you collect the modern Silver Eagles, the Mint last year launched the first ever Mint State Silver Eagle, or the Bullion Strike, with the privy mark of the star. And then this year followed it up with the beautiful eagle flying over "In God We Trust." Now, these were very limited vintages, only 500,000 apiece. They're tied for the lowest vintage Type 2 Silver Eagles of the Mint State series to date. And I know Mark had a huge, role in getting that going. I remember Mark, talking to me about this at the A&A show in Pittsburgh many years ago. And he had this vision, and it's incredible how he was able to bring this from a vision to fruition. I mean, especially with the U.S. Mint, partnering to make these coins. So, I mean, can you give us a little insight on the Star Privy, the Eagle Privy, how those came about, and then let's tie that in with how the Eighth Error Nice Gang video game, which is an awesome game I play it all the time, has actually been intertwined. What was the process there?
I had this idea to expand the coin kind of demographic and to reach a younger demographic. And I spoke to Dave Ryder at a coin show, who was the Mint director. We were having lunch, and he's like, our business is contracting. It's like 50, 60-year-old white guys buying coins. We need to do something here. So I said, why don't we do a video game? That was like 6, 7 years ago. But I always had this idea of taking characters off of coins, turning them into somebody you fight, and then you defeat them. Now they're on your side, and you could unlock that content behind that coin. So take an eagle, right? So it comes off of a silver eagle. You fight that character, and now you can off ramp and learn later on you won that silver eagle, and you learn that it's made in 1986. There's a variety of surfaces, mint marks, etc. So I built that game with some folks from Fox and Disney, and yes, it's doing really, really well. And I went to see Ventress Gibson and showed her a model of the game. I showed her a prototype, and she said, my grandchildren play these games, and it makes all the sense in the world. It's the largest segment of entertainment. It's over $100 billion a year spent on mobile games. And, you know, I said, look, I'll build this thing and I will send people that play the game and that are interested in numismatics. I'll send them one-way portal right over to the mint. And she says, you know, that would be great. So we built it. I built it. And as it was getting developed and we were soft launch, I said to her, look, I would love to have your URL, your logo, and I will send people over. So when we put these coins in holders, you know, they will, and they're online, I'll send them to the mint. And she kept saying, what do you want? And I said, well, you know, I just want to expand the coin business. It makes so much sense to me. I said, if you give me those things, then, you know, you have no downside, because if I get an influencer and he sort of turns out to be a, you know, an idiot on this side, you don't have to worry because you're on the other side. It's a one-way portal, no legal aspect whatsoever that they had to consider. And so I was with my son and we were having a conversation with the mint folks in DC. And she asked once again, what can we do for you? So my son said, you can make a silver eagle with a privy mark. And like, we all laughed, right? Because there's no way that's going to happen. So you know, we had like a dozen Zooms with them and we were talking about other things. And one day they wrote to me that they'd like to have a Zoom, which is odd. So I get on the Zoom and I told them I had just spoken to the, you know, the folks at Atlantic Record, and I have these, you know, these CEOs, my partner on the game, and I'm like talking away, and they go, we want to show you something. And they pull up the silver eagle with the privy mark, the star. And you know that emoji when you go like this? That's what I was like, what the hell? And so their idea was to do 1 million of those. And that's awesome, right? I'm like, that's fantastic. You know, this is groundbreaking. I love it. The coin business is going to love it. I said, you know, 1 million of them is just a lot. Let me come down to DC. Let's talk about the marketing of it, etc. Go down to DC. Andrew's there as well, and the CEO of Nice Gang. And we said, you know, what if you did 500,000 of star and 500,000 of an eagle? And I didn't like the star. I didn't like where they placed it, but it, you know, what are you going to do? This is what they presented. And they said, no, no, no. And I was ready to bag it. Like, you know, okay, 1 million of these, it's fine. It's not the same kind of, you know, hype. And my son said, let me try one more time. If you split this, it'll be fantastic. It'll just, you know, he explained how it'll expand that platform, the Silver Eagle platform, and it'll be so powerful. And one of the guys there goes, okay, we'll get back to you. And they did it. So they split 500,000 of star and silver and the Privy Eagle. They gave a Nice Gang 50,000 of the first 50,000 issued. I signed like 1,000 of those labels, and then we were able to use their logo and their logo and their URL. And then several months later, the Eagle came out. And I think that was very successful. The aesthetically, it looked much better. So, you know, I mean, look, to me, it's a great thing, right? It's great for the coin business. People loved it. Unfortunately, you know, the administration is shutting all that stuff down. We had another program that was going to come out that was going to blow people's minds, and it just got shut down. I mean, it's unfortunate, but the positive is we did it. I signed 1,000 of the first star, and then I think I did 2,500 of the next one. You know, and they brought stupid money. I think that it's great. I think that, you know, it's funny. I don't have one of each one. I don't have one. I don't have it signed.
I'll have to make sure you get it.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm very, very proud of it. It was a tremendously successful program, and Ventress really thought outside the box, and she should be proud of what she accomplished there.
Yeah, I think it was an amazing program. I think it was the right move. You know, less is more, right, for the scarcity, and you know, to really make it something that had tremendous hype around the coin. And you know, it's unfortunate that some of the other privy marks or other programs you guys were trying to work didn't come to fruition. However, from the value standpoint, from a collector, now that there's less of them, right, it's probably going to be something that's even more sought after than if there was 10 or 20 different privies. So, and I know they're following up this year with the Army privy, which is pretty cool. So we'll see what, you know, the Mint has in store. But yeah, I mean, listen, kudos to you guys to be able to put this together. And like I said, I was talking with Mark about this for years, and he gave me this idea. I thought it was a cool idea. And, you know, coming up with an idea and, you know, making it into, you know, bringing it to fruition is a lot more difficult than just thinking of an idea. So we give you kudos for that. And like I said, guys, if you want any of those Silver Eagles signed by Mark, you could ask us and we'll try to find you some. So, and I mean, I guess that, you know, listen, I know we're a little pressed for time, but, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, looking back at everything here, I mean, there's been tremendous accomplishments you've had, from grading the best of the best coins at the Smithsonian, you know, and restoring them and everything else, to being a coin dealer yourself, to really knowing the pulse of the market, to now creating a revolutionary video game that's going to really get the youth involved. And I can tell you from, you know, from family, friends, and this and that, people who have played the game, including myself, but even the younger generation, people are fascinated by it. And they love that in this game, I don't know if, you know, Mark really alluded to this, but you get physical actually rewards at certain parts of the game. So this is not like a regular video game where, you know, you're winning a fake trophy or a virtual trophy, which is cool and all regardless. But this is something you could actually physically be rewarded. And then you get into the collecting aspect of it, which has that intrinsic value too. So it really was a beautiful way to tie everything together, the synergies. And, like I said, I mean, impressive to get this from an idea and concept to where it is today.
Yeah, there's a lot of work and a lot of great people involved. But yeah, I did not mention that it's the first game ever to deliver physical rewards at scale, and the aftermarket on those is really crazy, right? I mean, you get them and they're trading in, you know, hundreds of dollars, in some cases thousands of dollars, and we plug in all the tools that we've used in the, you know, in the real certified numismatic world.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I guess reflecting on all this, I mean, you've had a long career in numismatics, kind of giving us a glimpse as to how you started, and why you're still involved as much as you are. I mean, what do you think is like the biggest lesson you've learned in this industry? And then what do you think is the biggest lesson you learned in collecting coins?
I think that, what's that?
Tough questions.
Yeah. The biggest lesson I learned is that, you know, greed is not good. Greed is bad, right? And you have a long line of, you know, decades of dealing with people, and you just learn that there's certain people you want to deal with, certain people you don't. And, you know, we created these services and certification to protect people. So you need to do your homework. You need to make sure you're dealing with the right people, and learn and enjoy it. And that's not too dissimilar to any other field that you think about getting involved in. As far as coins, I'm lucky enough to have a fabulous curated coin collection, and you know, when I'm looking back and I'm laying in bed at night, I think about like the $1794 that I sold. You know, I sold it, you know, to buy where I'm sitting, right? You know, I sold it for a reason, but I regret it. I regret selling really, really great things. The great things are just become more rarer over time. They're more difficult to get. And you know, while I was a dealer, I had to sell. I had to buy and sell, and I dealt in beautiful things, and I don't regret those because that's how you evolve. But as a collector, you know, I would say two things. One is the great things, if you can hold on to them, hold on to them. There's a process of buying material so you can learn and you can evolve. There's an education to it. And understanding when you have a great thing, hold on to it. You know, if I look around, you know, my condo, I would prefer everything be a 10. And that the luxury of doing that is few and far between, but I would buy less rather than more. I would buy better material rather than average material. That's I think the lesson that I would say. There's many lessons, but and then just get just get educated and deal with people that you like, and enjoy yourself, and understand this is a long-term thing. This is not stocks and bonds.
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, I think that one thing I've realized that some collectors, most don't, but some collectors have, I think, the wrong philosophy of wanting to buy and sell, buy and sell, buy and sell, and flip things, right? Whereas you said these one-of-a-kind pieces, these rarities, right, or hard-to-find coins are hard to find for a reason. And I could tell you from my own personal experience, anytime I've sold something that was really something that was unique, was rare, I always regret it, because then you go and you're like you said, you have, seller's remorse. You go back and you say, the coin is now, double the price of what I sold it for, and I can't even find it if I tried. So I think that my advice, and I agree with you there, is that as a collector, try to buy the best you possibly can afford. And at the same point, buy things that you have no intention on selling, that you really are going to enjoy, that you're going to hold for the long term. Just as Warren Buffett says, right? You want to buy things that you hold and hopefully never have to sell. If you have to, then at least you bought the best of the best stuff, and you're going to get good money for it. But, to sell things, and that's not what collecting is all about. Collecting is really taking the time, finding the right deals, finding what you like, finding what's rare, and then, really building around that and building a collection you could be proud of,
Yep.
So I agree with that 100%. So that kind of took one of my other questions as far as, what kind of advice can you give to, collectors and everything else. But I guess we'll end with this question. How do you want to be remembered in coins in general? Because you've touched upon everything. I mean, you've done comics, you've done trading cards, you've done artifacts, you've done coins. If you had to pick one thing to be remembered by, or for, what would that be?
I think it's changing the landscape of collecting worldwide. But also being, just, I miss people. Like I miss my employees. I miss the interaction with collectors very much. So this signing really ties me back into that. Doesn't bring me back to coin shows where I get agita, right? But it connects me. For example, like let's say that you have a collector that says, look, I'd like to talk to Mark, get his opinion of, proof Morgans or something, or proof buffaloes, gold buffaloes. I'm happy to talk to that person because I can guide them. I also I'm a mentor to a number of young people, and I founded that over at P&G, and I like that kind of stuff, right? So I want to be remembered for, I built this, great, it did well financially, all that, but I think it's just the impact that we've had on a positive sense worldwide and to the collector's experience, and making sure that that's a high standard. And I apply that to the game. I'm applying it to the next thing I'm doing, which will be announced soon. And I'm excited about these things now. It was 35 years of being a warrior in the grading world, kind of took it out of me. I was saturated, and now I'm finally feeling like I want to get back in. But only the way that I want to do it, and so my wife doesn't kill me.
Absolutely. Well, listen, Mark, it's been an absolute pleasure. Guys, once again, thank you for joining us on this stream and this podcast. I mean, Mark took the time out of his busy schedule. A lot of great insight here. Guys, if you want anything signed by Mark Salzberg, you can give us a call at Bullion Shark. We'll help you out any way we can. And like I said, Mark's only signing the best of the best coins. And we're excited to hear what you have in store for the future. We appreciate the time. Hopefully we could do this again soon. And like I said, we'll be in touch.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
No problem, Mark. Appreciate it. Once again, guys, Mark Salzberg. Thank you very much, Mark. Have a great day.